Howie, welcome to the show. So glad to have you here. Tell us about the world of licensing, how an inventor can get their product licensed.
I mean, it's a, how long do we have? I mean, it is a complicated process, but it can be made simple. So licensing is basically taking your product or your idea and essentially renting it out to somebody else. And in exchange, you'll get a royalty or, however you want to call it, a royalty commission, whatever you want to call it. And a lot of people do that because not everybody wants to start a business. Maybe they have another job. Not everybody is meant to start a business. Maybe they don't have the funding. Whatever it is, they may have an idea and someone else is better off to bring it to market, but they should get protection for it, intellectual property protection if they can. And so from my perspective, first thing you want to do is, and don't get mad at me, but I'm not always a rush to file a full utility patent. I've done it where once I've licensed something off of a design patent, but typically what I recommend people do is get a file a provisional, right, just to protect themselves to see if the idea is worth pursuing. So when you file, I know you guys know this, but when you file a provisional patent application, you basically get a year that preserves your place. Like, let's say I filed it today. What's today? Doesn't matter. Let's say today is July 17th, 2019, and you file your provisional patent today. And let's say in 6 months, you're like, okay, let's go forward with this. I want to license, I'm going forward. I'm going to do something. Now you file your patent, your utility patent, you get that July 17th date, and someone can jump ahead of you, right? As you guys know.
Right, so if I file mine on July 18th, sorry, you beat me.
And that gives protection to the independent inventor from going out and trying to license a product. That's your protection. You're patent pending, and people are less likely. I'm not telling you no one will ever steal your idea, but in all the times, and I started out, when I first started trying to license products, I was nervous, and I would have graphic designers signing NDAs. And then I realized, you know what? It's really hard to get a product to market. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying no graphic designer will take your idea and beat you to market, but it's really hard. So you don't want to slow your process down too much with things that you don't necessarily need. And especially if it's a novelty type of product or something like that. Listen, if you're doing a medical device or something, software related, then you need to get NDAs and really get full protection.
I agree with most of what you're saying. I would say that the main thing is to talk with a patent professional before you get too far down the road, because there's trade-offs for doing or not doing everything that you suggest, and it's best if the client is aware ahead of time of what they may be saving money, but what are they giving up. Sometimes NDAs are necessary to protect patent rights if there's going to be an international filing later on down the road, but you may not be worried about that. So really, it's best to get the advice of a professional and chart your course. So yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I mean, there's no one size fits all approach for anything, right? And mm-hmm. so life typically is not black and white. There's much more gray, and so you're right, and I agree. But as a blanket thing, that's how I've been operating. And I do speak to patent attorneys, obviously. And
how do you find people that will license your stuff? I mean, I think that's the biggest hurdle that people face.
First of all, I guess what we call a hit list. We put together a hit list of people who might be potential licensees of our product. So the best way to do that, believe it or not, is to go to a store. Let's just say we're talking about a consumer product. Actually, I'll use an example of one of mine. I came up with an idea for a travel pillow, and what I learned pretty quickly is you can't get into these places in the airport. Like, someone has that locked up. They're the exclusive pillow supplier. Like, all of them, most places like Hudson News, they have their pillow supplier, right? And what I did was, you go to that store and you look for the products that are somewhat similar to yours, where that would sit on the store shelf, and you look on the packaging, you take down the names, and those are your people that you would license to. Those are, maybe you possibly consider them competitors if you were going to make it yourself, But since you're looking to license, they become your potential licensees. And you also go online and you do a Google search, a deep Google search. You go on Amazon, and when you go to Google, I can't tell you how many times I've spoken to other inventors, like wannabe inventors. I've coached inventors and taught them how to license and helped them get their products to market. I can't tell you how many times they've said, yeah, I've done the research. I'm like, okay, and I'll literally plug in a different term than they used, and I'll come up with the exact same thing they're talking about. I'm like, did you see this? They said, oh no, that didn't come up. So when you do your searches, you can't just think what you would call it. You have to think what anybody else might call it also.
Wow, what fantastic advice, though, to actually go into the store and look at what's being sold. Because if it has a spot on a store shelf, it's moving. Somebody's buying it, and the company behind it is successful. And that's a really quick way, I think, to get some information about who might be interested.
And what's so interesting is so many people, I started out like this too. I used to think, my idea has to be so unique, there's nothing like it out there. Well, sometimes that's a problem. It may not be out there because there's no demand for it. Not always, but you're often better off like coming up with a small tweak that makes something better than, because that's already selling, and somebody like a potential licensee is more likely to take it on because they know that it sells like this. With your added improvement, it'll sell a lot more.
How do you actually get to the people to talk to who would make the decision about to license your product? Because that's pretty hard too, right?
I hate to say it like this, but it depends kind of who you are and how confident you are, and your willingness to step outside your own comfort zone. For me, believe it or not, I've licensed, I want to say 2, it might be 3 products through LinkedIn. Literally reaching out to people on LinkedIn, and I've written an article. I actually wrote an article on LinkedIn that went viral about how to send cold emails. It had in like a few months, it had like 300,000 views, and I'm not telling you that's the only way to do it, but it's a really good way, especially, people don't pick up the phone quite so much anymore, right? So it's hard to get through to people. But you have to kind of play detective a little bit to find out who some of the right people might be at the company. You call up the company and you say, who handles this? Do you guys take outside submissions? And they may say no, but they may not even know the person who answers the phone. But you try and find the person. You go online and you find, let's say, the company's ABC Corp. And at ABC Corp, you put in sales at ABC Corp, and you'll find out the person who it is. And then you just try and find out their email format. Like most companies have there's like 1 of 4 email formats. First initial, last name, first name, dot last name. It's going to be one of those. And there's tools out there to test if it's the right email address. So I've used LinkedIn. I've gone to connections, friends of friends. I've picked up the phone. But, I'll give you an example. I had somebody that I was coaching who was trying to license products, and he did not want to call anyone. He was so reluctant, and I'm like, I just challenged him. I'm like, you got to do it. And he actually had somebody interested in his product, and he didn't want to call them. So finally, he picked up the phone, he got the licensing deal, and now he makes calls all the time, and he's not afraid to do it. So I think, a lot of inventors tend to not be comfortable, dealing with people and stepping out of their comfort zone. But once you do, you'll see you'll reap so many more benefits, and you'll have so many more. You'll get more people to respond. And one more thing I want to say. I'm sorry for rambling on here, but there's so much to this that cold email or cold LinkedIn reach out. When you reach out to somebody, what inventors typically do, I get emails that are literally 1 paragraph thick, this long. I don't want to read that. That shows up as work. Who wants to do that? And think about the other person on the receiving end of that. All you do is you send 2 or 3 sentences that are short, to the point, and just intrigue them a little bit. Ask them if you can tell them about it. Don't even tell them much about it. Just say, I have a great product that solves this problem, or whatever it is. Are you open to a conversation? How simple is that? And it shows respect for their time.
Howie, you've been on Shark Tank, right? So tell us, how did that evolve? And tell us about DudeRobe, which is your latest project.
All I wanted to do was license products. I'd licensed 5 products, and I never wanted to manufacture anything. And then I came up with this crazy idea. I'm in the shower, and I come up with this idea for a cooler bathrobe for guys. in fact, what I did was I literally get out of the shower, get dressed, run to Walmart, bought 6 towels, brought it to my tailor, and I said, hey, can you make me a hoodie and pants out of this? And he did. And then literally a week later, I had my first prototype. It just shows you, like, you know, just do something, like take action. That's what most inventors tend not to do. And what I did was I decided, all right, I can't license this thing.
So you just had an idea in the shower. You ran up to somebody. You had a prototype made. Do you have any idea whether this would be popular or have any market pull?
You know, I thought if I liked it, and then I asked like some of my friends if they, you know, most guys I know aren't robe guys. I'm like, but what if you had a cooler version of that, right? If we updated the robe, and I got good feedback, but I was willing to at least make the prototype because that cost me very little, and I'm like, let's see what it looks like, let's see if it's something that I think would sell. But I realized, I'm like, you know, I can't license this. Apparel, as you know, is very difficult to protect from an intellectual property standpoint, right?
I mean, you can get a design patent, but you know, if somebody really wants to, they can make a few small changes to the product, and then you're kind of stuck.
I've done design patents, and it's really helped me, but in this case, it wasn't worthwhile. So I said, all right, what am I going to do? And I decided, since I was coaching other inventors on how to license products and how to get products to market, let me try Kickstarter. Right? This in my head was a good Kickstarter product because it could rise above the noise. A bathrobe for guys, like, you know, is kind of, you know, like a newer, cooler bathrobe.
Well, it's not just that. You never know what to get, guys. Like, they go buy their own fancy sports cars. And they buy their
let me see, robe, sports car, that's a tough one.
Right.
So it's like, what do I get the guy that has everything?
So I decided to do a Kickstarter, and Kickstarter is a fascinating platform, and it takes a lot of work to become successful at it. Before you launch your Kickstarter, it takes a lot of work before you do it. But I launched my Kickstarter. I set a funding goal of $25,000, and I launched. It took me longer than I wanted to get my samples and all that. So I launched in June, which who launches a bathrobe product in June? Because it's really a fourth quarter product for the most part. And I launched in June, and in 2 days I hit my funding goal, which was pretty cool. And 5 days after that, so literally 1 week into the formation of my company, I get a direct message on Twitter saying, I'm the head of casting of Shark Tank, let's talk.
So were you like pre-selling the robes? So were you taking orders, and that's how you were getting the Kickstarter funds?
Right, Kickstarter is for goods. It's a pre-order platform. That's what you're doing. And it basically turns the manufacturing process on its head. The manufacturing process, what it used to be, or what kind of still is sort of broken, right? You have to go manufacture whatever the minimum order quantity is of whatever your product is. Let's say 5,000 pieces, and it costs you, let's say, $20 a piece. That's $100,000. You have to bring it here. You have to warehouse it, and now you got to go first see if anybody wants to buy it. But Kickstarter lets you see if anybody wants to buy it before you really spend a lot of money, other than on your Kickstarter campaign. I didn't think that this product was ready to go on Shark Tank, but I also, you know, took a step back.
But when Shark Tank calls, you answer, right?
This guy does. What has 2 thumbs and answers when Shark Tank calls? This guy. So there was, my thought process was, I don't know if Shark Tank will be on the air in a year. I don't know what my product will do. Let me see. Let me take that experience. Let me get out of a comfort zone. Let me just.
Yeah, but isn't that's kind of what an entrepreneur does a lot? They put themselves into situations, and they're only 50% sure that they can make it work, right? But you've got to kind of put yourself out there, take that risk a little bit.
100%. And I have other entrepreneurs and inventors saying to me, "Oh, but you were lucky. You had the luck." And I'm like, "Yeah, you're right. But I had luck because I put myself out there, because I did all these things that let the luck find me." I'm a big believer in you create your own luck.
It sounds like you go through and research everything and get all your ducks in a row, and then you move forward.
For the most part, but I mean, with DudeRobe, I you know what? That's fair. I did really research Kickstarter and how to succeed at it, but I was not going to let. I had all sorts of issues along the way, like my manufacturer, like a week before I was about to launch, they tripled my prices. I had to find a new manufacturer.
Oh my gosh.
And thankfully, you reach out to your friends, you include people in the process, and people feel like that's the biggest thing with being successful on Kickstarter. You include people in the process and you keep them, you have a mailing list and email list and you tell them what's going on and they feel like they're part of it and they want to help you. They want to be part of it. And that's, I think that, and I had a lot of people help me along the way. And anyway, so Shark Tank, you go through the stages of Shark Tank and you either get on or you don't. And they tell you, 40,000, at least my year, 40,000 people applied. I don't know, 160 or so get flown out to LA and about 100 are there. So I did a little math and I said, all right, that's a quarter of 1% of people. Yeah.
So why do you think, what characteristics of the product and of you put you at the head of the line compared to 40,000 other people?
It's a good question. It started with the product and it started with like kind of that it not only the product what it was, but it had a little attitude behind it. Like the brand voice that I created for it had some attitude to it. And I think they liked that. Then when she and I spoke, she loved my story, like my background. I don't even know if you know this, I'm an attorney. I was a sports agent. I did Under Armour's first ever sports licensing deal for Under Armour. And I did a lot of other cool deals. I used to do World Series of Poker, all their deals with ESPN. So she loved my backstory. She loved, the whole inventing thing, that I coached other inventors, and then how I did this one. So I think from a product standpoint, like I said, I did the Kickstarter because I thought it would rise above the noise of Kickstarter, right? And I think that's important. I think you have to have a product that has a voice and can rise above the noise.
When you were talking about there's no way I'm going to get a patent on this because bathrobe's been around forever, then you have to jump in and really develop your brand, if that's the case.
Yeah. I wanted it to have a particular language and even the name, right? I chose the name DudeRobe amongst, obviously it wasn't the only name I came up with, and I chose it because, I wanted robe in the name, even though I didn't want robe in the name, if that makes sense. Because people needed to have an image of what the heck this thing is, so I put it in the name, and then the dude part was kind of that kind of like leads the whole conversation for the rest of the the voice and the storytelling.
Right, it's not stuffy old man bathrobe.
Exactly.
It's
exactly.
a dude, bro.
Right.
For a dude.
Our special guest, Howie Busch. Howie, how can people reach you?
Howie at DudeRobe.com.